Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to everyone that has joined us. So this session is called the Thrive session, and the idea behind Thrive sessions is to really strengthen our interaction with one another as AN members. There's a lot of knowledge. There's a diversity of skills, knowledge, networks that we can really benefit from when we get to share with each other, interact, network. And so we have a lot of countries represented within the network, and we believe there's a lot that we can actually do to help each other. And so that's the idea behind the Thrive session. It's a knowledge sharing session that will be holding every other month. And the idea, like I said, is to really help us share knowledge with each other and strengthen, each other. And so today's session is tagged how to, the secrets for winning funded opportunities. I'm sure a number of us might have had experiences trying to apply for opportunities. Sometimes we are successful, sometimes we are not. But in between, there are lessons to be learned, and there are tricks, right? There are tips, there are strategies that you can use, to build capacity over time to have a very strong profile that can really give you a high chance of being successful at applications like this. And one of such applications is actually going on, which is the Ban Ki-moon Scholarship. Like I said, a lot of us within the network, some have reached out to me personally because I'm also a beneficiary, and they're like, how can we, put our best foot forward for this scholarship? So we thought, why not make the first session all about, funded opportunities, sharing, learning from some of us who have been quite successful at competitive funded opportunities like small grants, mini projects, and scholarships like the Ban Ki-moon Scholarship. So without wasting any more time, we would go right into the discussion. And so we have a very distinguished panel. Two of our panelists are going to join us later on in the conversation. But with me here already, we have Ruvimbo, Samaga, and Ifeanyi, Omah. I'm going to leave them to do the introduction because I'm not going to read their entire profiles for you. I will just leave them to introduce themselves by themselves in about 1 minute each. So I will start with you, Ru. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you're about, where you're from, and then Ifeanyi would go.
Thank you so much, Oyinda, and welcome to everyone who's tuning in. My name is Ruvimbo Samaga. I'm from Zimbabwe, and I work as a space law and policy analyst. I work in the aerospace industry, and I currently work as a research consultant for the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, as well as a number of different organizations and think tanks. My work really is in capacity building in the legal area, which is not all too different from normal legal practice, except it's being applied to a technical industry. So I very much enjoy not only just the policy side of matters, but also education, entrepreneurship, and outreach as a developing and highly impactful field that I'm involved in. So today I'll be sharing my experience not only in that industry, but also with the Ban Ki-moon Global Center for Global Citizens, where I was able to take part in a micro project that was also space related. So I think there's some interesting linkages to discuss there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ru. That's quite an impressive profile, and it's really great to have you here with us. So Ifeanyi, thank you for joining us as well. Can you also briefly introduce yourself to members of the network?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ifeanyi, and I am so happy to be here. Before now, in Nigeria, I was working as a lecturer in a university. So in particular in the Department of Parasitology and Entomology. And then apart from that, I have been involved in rural community outreaches trying to appraise the primary health care and get people, and especially the maternal and child health, getting them to use the primary health center in the rural community. And where the rural community primary health are not properly equipped, we try to engage the local government chairman and people who are involved to make sure that it is modestly equipped for people to make use of them. And courtesy of that, I got the Mastercard Foundation scholarship to come for my master's in the UK, where I'm currently studying global health policy. And then by October, I'm also an incoming Wellcome Trust Foundation scholar of my PhD program in global health as well. So that is it about me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ifeanyi, for also joining us and for the amazing work that you're doing in the health space. So quickly, we would go into the conversation, and basically, like I said before, the idea behind this session is to get to understand the tricks, the strategies, what is the pathway to, you know, having an impressive profile, building a strong portfolio that can allow, you know, us as young people position ourselves better for not just opportunities within our countries, but outside of our countries, globally, to get that kind of global recognition that we need. So I'll start with you, Ru. I think you have a very interesting profile because, number one, I don't even know what space stuff is about. I really didn't know much about it until I probably met you at Outback. But I think generally, one thing you've probably been able to do well is to position yourself, you know, globally, in that sense of being able to access certain spaces. And I would like to ask you, what skills, you know, as a young person yourself, what skills would you say young people need in order to compete in the global space? And I'm saying that in the sense of you reflecting on your own experience, working in international organizations. Like you said, you currently consult for the United Nations Economic Commission or something. I don't know if I got the acronym correctly, but you know, working with a UN affiliated organization and working on projects, you know, across different countries and diverse spaces like trade, you know, space, human rights, and all of that. What would you say are the skills, those cross-cutting skills that really young people need when they want to position themselves, you know, in the global space?
So I'll answer the question in twofold. So I think there are certain career skills you need, as well as just certain personal or interpersonal skills that you would also need. But starting with the interpersonal skills, I think that's the most important because that's where your motivation derives from. I think it's so important as young people that we let go of the fear of receiving feedback or criticism, because I feel that that is what essentially holds many of us back from going after what we believe in. And, you know, the reality at the end of the day is even when you're doing well, you're bound to face, you know, critique. So at the end of the day, you might as well just put yourself out there. But a lot of the reasons why, you know, you get to the end of your life with so much regret, I've heard, is just that there was a time for you to pursue what you wanted to pursue, and that time unfortunately elapsed, and you get to your end of life cycle and you realize that all that people said really didn't matter at the end of the day. It's really just words and has no bearing on how well or how badly you do your job. So I think that's the first thing. I think secondly, and interrelated to that, you have to be very self-motivated, because especially if you're working in an industry like the space industry, where not many people might understand it, you need to really be able to dig deep and push through regardless and understand your own vision. And I think the third thing is be willing to start small. I think sometimes we have these big, you know, grandiose visions of making it big or going viral in a day or receiving that, you know, big job, you know, at the outset, but it really starts with small steps that culminate over time, and you have to start somewhere at the end of the day. So don't despise, you know, the day of humble beginnings. They really do amount to much. And, you know, my career, as much as perhaps the last 2 years have been prolific, really started in high school. You know, I really made the intention to push towards my career at all stops since I was 16. So a lot of people see the iceberg at the top, you know, but they neglect everything that has sort of added up onto that. So I really just encourage everyone also just start now. There's never a good time to start things. I'll give a personal example. I set up a website recently, which I was really scared to launch because I felt like it wasn't perfect, but I just launched it anyway, you know, and there was so much good feedback. But if you go and see the website right now, it's actually not done. So, but you know, the point is to get it going, and that continues to motivate you to keep going forward. And people, they give their feedback and they help you make it better, and they help you avoid mistakes as well. I'll quickly move over to the career skills that you need. You need resilience, of course, because it's not always going to be easy, especially when you're young. There's just a lot of different intersectionalities and bias and prejudice that you might be up against as well. So you need to just be a little bit tough-skinned. You need to develop a network. At the end of the day, the people that you surround yourself around are really the people who could make or break your career. And I think also when it comes to these opportunities, you need to believe in yourself. I can tell you that at least 60% of the things that I've applied for, I was not qualified for, but I was fortunate enough to get it because I was bold and I did the work and I did the research and I proved. And this goes against all of the different requirements you could see. I've had opportunities where I was younger than the threshold, opportunities where I was less academically qualified than the threshold, opportunities where I even had less years in experience, but I applied anyway. And I was very shocked to see the result at the end of the day, but I told myself that if I do the research and I can do the work, then these, you know, requirements are really just, you know, for the evaluator. They're not for me at the end of the day. So that's my takeaway, at least from my career projection.
Thank you so much, Ru, for sharing those very insightful tips. And I really like what you said about starting small and just, you know, going for it, whether or not, you know, you even have all the requirements. And I think that's something, you know, for we young people, there's a lot of, sometimes you face a lot of pushback and, you know, a lot of doubts. But I would say, or I think that, you know, behind all of those things, there's also a level of, should I say, there's a level of skill you need to have when it comes to even talking about your achievements. I think a lot of young people are also not comfortable when it comes to talking about themselves. I think beyond even, you know, say you want to take a leap, a lot of what you are going to communicate to whoever you're applying to wherever you're applying to is through your essay, is through some material. And that means there's some skill you have to have, you know, to communicate those interesting achievements or capabilities that you have. So I would want to throw the next question to Ifeanyi, as someone who has applied for scholarships, probably faced a number of rejections yourself. When you're writing these applications, or when you're thinking about your application, what would you say are the tips that have really helped you, especially in communicating your skills, your achievements, for people that might not be very familiar with writing about themselves, or writing for an audience that may not know what they do and they really want to put their best foot forward? What are like your top scholarship winning writing tips? Oh, you're on mute. Okay.
Thank you so much for that question. So first of all, I will say that for you to start applying for a particular scholarship, there is a need to sit down and ask yourself, what have I done? And where have I done those things? And how have I done those things? And then in what particular capacity, and what are the results that I achieve by doing this? So those are the kind of questions you need to ask. And then by asking those questions, don't just figure it out in your head. I think it's something to write them down and detail them as explicit as possible. And then afterwards, you can now read through those prompts, because every particular essay or every particular scholarship has prompts. So from those prompts, you look at what they are asking for. And then those things they are asking for is definitely what you really have. You know, I really listened to what Ruvimbo said. So, and it's actually true in all cases. And sometimes people want to make mistake of trying to get people's essay. And then when you get people's essay, you feel demotivated. You feel that they've done so much and these things are not for me. But I want to say that there is a particular story you have that others don't have, no matter how small it is, no matter how big it is. People might have done so much, but they don't know how to tell it in a very simple way so that others could understand. So, and that's why I'm saying that, first of all, what have you done? All those things that you have done, there is a particular, in what context have you done those things? And then with who? And then what are the results you achieve? Once you have detailed those things down, and then begin to look at those scholarships, and then look at people who are in that career, because let's assume you want to go into the field of health, and then look at people who have done those courses. What are they doing now? And then what are they likely to do? So that the big picture you need to have in your mind. And then the ones you have is the smaller picture, probably what you have done. And then with that, connects what you have done with what you are going to achieve with those things. And then another mistake that people also made, that I made, was initially I was writing, for example, I want to say, I want to solve the problem of malaria. I will start quoting WHO, what WHO said that the challenge is, what UNICEF said the challenge is. That's not what these people want to hear. They know that those challenges exist. So they want to say, how have you contributed to those challenges? And then from there, you will use that to connect it with what WHO is doing. And then from there, you can now see the big picture and see what you are going to do with it afterwards. And then another thing is, what are the skills that you have worked before? Even though you have not done so much, I also want to say that sometimes you may not have the opportunity, or you might not have been guided and say, do this or do that. But the truth is that you have gone to school. There are particular skills that you have that nobody else have. So how are you going to use that skill to apply it in that stuff? Because I want to let you know that there is no scholarship board that will give you a scholar without seeing the potential, what you are going to bring into the on the board or contribute to the scholarship program. So those skills, you can bring those skills, connect those skills with what they really want you to say. And then with that, it will actually give you a cutting edge among all the applicants that are coming for it. So in summary, what I want to say is, try to make sure that write those things you have done, how you have done them, what the skills you have achieved, and then with those things, connect them with the bigger picture and connect it with the main ethos of those board, of those scholarship programs, and hopefully you will definitely get it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ifeanyi. That was very profound. I particularly liked what you said about connecting your small picture to the big picture. So knowing where you are, where you stand, what you've done, and how that can, how that relates or aligns with a bigger picture, how it's contributing to that bigger picture. Because in the end, we can only solve, our own part of the problem. We can't solve all problems. So really understanding where you stand and how that places you in a unique position, and then connecting it to a bigger picture is very important. So I think that's a very key takeaway for those of us, currently working on applications. It's very important to be able to paint a context that really aligns with what the opportunity is about. And that would take me back to Ruvimbo. So I think from what you and Ifeanyi have said, there's a lot of emphasis on you and what what you're about, what your skills, believing in yourself. But then there's also the other part, which is the opportunity itself, like factors you might not be able to control. So I want to ask you, based on your experience, how do you recognize opportunities that, are, or should I say, I don't want to say that are for you, but that could be for you? How do you identify the right opportunities? Because as much as you want to believe yourself, you also want to be sure you're making informed decisions. You want to be sure that you're not spreading yourself thin. So you're strategically applying for things. So what's your own strategy or roadmap towards identifying opportunities that, are probably suited for you, and that could lead to global competitiveness? Because, okay, sorry to want to build up on this a bit, but I believe in this concept I call compounding, where one opportunity obviously leads to another. And like you said, you started your journey since you were 16. So you didn't just wake up to become a Ban Ki-moon scholar. There were like moments that led up to that moment. So really, how do people make informed decisions when it comes to identifying opportunities and opportunities that have potential to lead to like global competitiveness?
So it's actually really fortunate that I saw something today which really speaks to that question. And I think you need to ask yourself 4 questions. What do I love doing? So you need to be passionate about it. Oftentimes we're under pressure to go for so many things because we, want to put our eggs in different baskets, but that can also lead us to running ourselves thin. So to sort of whittle down on what you really, deserve to pursue, you need to be passionate about it. The other thing is, what am I good at? If something is taking you weeks to do, then most likely it's not something worth your time. It's something that someone else can maybe better fulfill. So what you're good at will usually not take most of your time. I go by a rule, which doesn't go for everyone, but this is how I sort of keep myself in check, which is if a task takes me more than 30 minutes, either I'm not good at it or I don't like it, So if an email, if an essay, if any kind of task takes me more than 30 minutes, then I sort of start to have an inkling that I'm not enjoying it, or I don't have the particular skill set. There's something that I learned in my career, which I think runs true, which is at the end of the day, we're not paid so much only for the expertise, but also how quickly we can dispense that expertise, because practice makes perfect. So again, you start to hone in on your skills so much that you are efficient at it. And if you're not efficient, then maybe you are, putting your eggs in too many baskets and you're not really focusing on what your core talent is. The third question you can ask is, what does the world need? And this is very important if you're a Ban Ki-moon scholar or any other kind of international organization, because at the end of the day, you want to do something that's impactful. So really look at what is it that could really break ground in your immediate community. And then lastly, can I be paid for it? We don't talk enough much about the remuneration, but it's so important as young people, especially when we're starting our careers and we're looking for stability, that we receive our due compensation. And when you're looking at opportunities, not to say avoid voluntary work, but I believe there's a time for everything. So in the beginning, when you are going for exposure, voluntary work will really give you the kind of exposure you need to get your name out there. But once your name is out there, you can then begin to focus on things that help you solidify your career and help you upgrade your career. And for that, you need resources. So when looking for opportunities, I think keeping those 4 things in mind helps. Sorry, Oyinda, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I was saying that, thank you so much, Ru. That was quite profound. I just want to clarify when you said that, if something takes you probably more than 30 minutes, so that people don't have very radical opinions about stuff. I think probably there are probably points in your life where, like she said, where you're building and where you're trying to earn that skill. It might typically take you longer, but it shouldn't be in such a way that every other time, after you've invested so much time into learning something, that you're still not able to dispense the expertise, as she said, efficiently, because in the end, that's what you'll be paid for, and that's what shows that you can get results. So I just wanted to clarify that so that people don't live with very radical opinions about what they are good at or not. And so I would come back to you, Ifeanyi, just to delve a bit into your experience. You're now a multiple scholarship winner, as I am aware, because from your master's scholarship, you've also been able to acquire a PhD scholarship. And I think there's a level of mastery that comes to being able to access such opportunities. So let's talk about it from a more academic point of view. Like, what are some of the mistakes that you've made in the past, or what are some of the mistakes you made in the past that you learned from and you did not repeat this time around, that made it possible for you to be able to get the PhD scholarship? So for instance, I know you were sharing with me that there was a point, before you got the master scholarship, where you weren't so successful. And when you even got the master scholarship, you got about 2 opportunities and then you had to choose. So within those periods of transition, before the masters, during the masters, now in the PhD, what were some of the things that you literally had to improve on and iterate to make you a very, very competitive scholar, if you could put it that way?
Okay. First of all, I have to be realistic with myself. When I've tried and I failed, I have to tell myself the truth. I think what I noticed was that my writing was bad. So I had to work on it. So because I noticed that sometimes everybody is writing, but you have to write. And you have to write what will make your essay appealing to people. So, and with that, I have to take online courses, and then I have to also make friends with people who I know they can write. And with that, it actually helped me to, permit me to use this word. It actually helped me to make my essays a bit sexy, so that, so that when people are reading it, they can relate with it. They can know that actually these things are real and they are there. And secondly, I also learned to take risks in my essays. Sometimes we are tempted to repeat what's on our CV, on the essay, but it doesn't work that way. So I tried it severally and it failed. So, but when I started taking risks, and the risk I mean is to tell story, to actually leave an impression in the heart of someone who is going to assess your essay. So, and the impression is the story. How touching is the story we are bringing? Not that telling a miserable story, but actually telling a story about you in a more realistic way, in a way that when the person read it, the person feels that he actually knows this person. So that is what I'm talking about. So sometimes people will just go expand their CV and their essay. It doesn't work that way. That's what I have actually come to realize. So, and then thirdly is getting, after you have finished writing your essay, giving it out to people to actually review for you. And then giving it to people to review for you means that someone who not someone who will read it and tell you, oh, everything is good, everything is nice, I enjoy reading it. You actually know that you have written an essay that is good in your own eyes. So you don't want someone that will tell you it is good. Give it to someone that can actually criticize and then tell you that, oh, this we can do it like this, we can do it like this, we can remove this, we can adjust this. So, and then with that, is going to help a lot to actually make your essay a bit more better and more refined and touched. So, and then another, from the academic point of view, is that the different essays also want you to have a clear sense of what you are going to do after you are done, like as if you have figured it out, even though you have not figured it out yet. But they want to know that this person we are giving this thing, how are others going to benefit from you? And I think that's where it is very, very important, because the reason why they can't sponsor everybody in Africa, they must sponsor one person who will also benefit others. So it is good that while writing, there is a need to pay more emphasis on how others are going to benefit from you personally. So that is what I really want to also, in your essay, it must always reflect. Even when they are asking you for your career plan, even when they are asking you to tell about your personal story, let it be that this is how people have benefited from me from the past, and this is how they are going to benefit from me in the future. So let that be profound, let it be resounding, let it be recurrent in all the paragraph, in all the pages as they read along. So that's a very important tip. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much, Ifeanyi. Like, what you've just shared is actually it's one of those roadmaps or tips that people can apply to different kinds of applications. And I also have a sort of template similar to what you've shared. But just to give a recap on what you said, to make it to echo what you've said to everyone on this call, is to envision yourself as somebody that the funders or the donors or the sponsors are making an investment in. And so you need to have a very clear plan on how they would get their ROI, their return on investment. And that's what Ifeanyi said about, how would other people benefit from you? How would your community benefit from you? How would your sector benefit from that scholarship? Because they can't give everybody. There must be a justification for choosing you out of the many others. And that justification usually lies in the fact that there will be a multiplier effect by investing, in quotes, in this person. This person would extend or scale their impact in such a way that it will affect other people, possibly affect communities. Of course, there is really no way to measure some of these things, and that's where your storytelling skills come to play. It's really about being able to position yourself as the person that is capable of doing those things in a way that is very convincing. So I think that's very important, and it's one tip that would work even for any scholarship, whether it's academic or not. So quickly, I will go back to you, Ru, before we now maybe focus more on the Ban Ki-moon scholarship and mini SDG projects and all of those good stuff that Ban Ki-moon applicants might be curious about. It's just going to be about personal storytelling. I'm quite passionate about this topic, or should I say, I'm quite inclined towards us having a more detailed conversation on this topic, because Ifeanyi talked about the fact that, at some point he had to admit to himself that he could not write. And I think he could not write in a particular way, let me put it that way. Like, he could not write for a certain audience. And I think that's one thing a lot of people probably need to recognize, that the fact that people might not be getting certain opportunities doesn't exactly mean you're not good enough. It probably means you're not communicating that value enough. So, for you, has it always been that you've always been a good storyteller? Or, what are some of those key things that make for a very good story? Like, what would you say are your personal storytelling tips to, like, someone that doesn't even think they know how to write very well at all?
Ooh, that's a loaded one. So 3 things. I think the first is, it's not a skill that is inherent sometimes. So you necessarily have to practice, and at sometimes you might even fail. But the idea is always to receive feedback. So I and my very interesting network have this thing where whenever we receive a rejection, if it's something that we really wanted, we will go out of our way to ask, how could we have improved and what were you looking for? And this gives us a sense, not only just for the opportunity, but for any other really, to see what are some of the critical and essential skills. So from that, you get to see what are the peculiar kind of storytellings that are needed out there in the community. I think the second thing is being willing to receive a second opinion. So getting people to listen to your story and give you honest feedback on how it resonates with them and whether they understand it. And I think the third thing is to be authentic. I find often with essay writing, and I've been guilty of this very much in the past, we often try to say the story that we think, the evaluator wants to hear, and we end up saying something out of a fairy tale. And, as an evaluator, I've also been on both sides where I read some of these essays and you begin to tell, the essays, the authentic ones from the, very well manicured ones. And it's not to say a well manicured story is not acceptable, but you really want your authentic self to come out, because that's the way the evaluator connects with you. So the best way to be authentic is to use simple language, is to tell the truth, and is to highlight what the moral lesson is, what you learned from that experience, or why this experience is important to you. I think those are the three important things. But at the end of the day, storytelling is so, it is innate, especially in African culture, because that's how we have passed down our history over the years. So it's something that I feel we have deep down, but we need to nurture and consistently put time and effort into. So I would encourage everyone to really go home and think of what are the three defining, stories in your life that have made you who you are. But I think the one story that I know most evaluators ask, and which you can prepare for in advance anyway, is, tell us an experience where you overcame an obstacle, and how was that a significant moment for you? And I think from this, it really touches back to what I was saying at the beginning. It highlights your resilience. It highlights your power of hindsight. It highlights your principles. So I think if you really want a question that can sharpen your storytelling, that's probably the one you should use for practice. And always keep a motivational on hand that speaks to that.
Thank you so much, Ru. That's a very practical way for people to sharpen their storytelling skills. And I like that you rounded up on that. Just to touch a bit on what you said about like manicured essays and all that. I think it's something that a lot of people do, but not only that, as someone that also, gives advice to people on how to write essays, I think it's usually this idea that all I need to see is a template. And when I see a template, I would know, I would be able to write a story. Now, like, it's usually good to ask people for their essays to, understand how you could position yourself. But what I find that some people end up doing when you share an example with them is that they literally try to force their story into that person's story. Because, I mean, we are humans, so we could get very distracted. And when you say, oh, Ruvimbo works in space, and then you start thinking, okay, what grand thing have I done, or what very uncommon thing, so it could be very distracting. So if one practical tip for anybody working on different applications is that I would usually advise that you don't necessarily have to start by asking someone for their own essay example, but if you have to do that, have the mental discipline to see where that story points you to in your own story, not trying to fit your experience into another person's template, because at the back of your mind, you feel like because it has worked for this person, you're now trying to walk back and say, I just need to fit my story into this person's story. But you literally have to use that story to find your own story, not the other way around. So I just thought it was important to point that out. Okay, so we have Dennis and Akosua who have joined us now. So I think I would just give them the floor for about a few minutes. Dennis, are you able to speak? Welcome, Akosua.
Thank you, guys. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Okay, so can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So Dennis, so actually I've sort of used, some of the line of questioning that I had wanted to ask you. We've sort of addressed them, but what I would like you to speak on now is you reflecting on your own experience, as somebody that has worked on small projects, community projects, working at the grassroots, working with a lot of young people, how important would you say it is to, get involved in some of these projects for people that want to position themselves for global opportunities? I know you usually say that, or you've said a few times that Albach was one of your first expositions into the global space in that sense. So in that sense that you have done a lot more work, at the community level, and, you were just trying to get better platforms to scale the work you're doing. So, looking back at your experience, now that you've been able to access certain other opportunities, what would you say is the importance of small local projects in preparing oneself for, bigger opportunities?
All right, thank you so much, Oyinda. So the thing is that for the global space, if one is to actually go global, it's important that you actually you are able to contextualize, the global goals or whatever it is that are the global issues. Like I tell people that there are only 17 problems in the world, other than 17, there are no other problems. And, all of those problems are, could be found in the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, so what is left for you is actually to contextualize it and bring it into your local community and look at one or two of those problems you really want to solve and begin to solve them in line of the targets of the SDG that is supposed to be met. So for example, if your XDG is actually, let's say goal 3, for example, health and well-being, you can now begin to say, okay, in my own community, there are other targets that are supposed to be met. You can now begin to say, okay, for example, if it's, neonatal care, if it's maternal, and child health, then you look at the statistics as it appeals to your country or to your locality. If you can find, for instance, in Nigeria, you can find some of all this data, from the National Bureau of Statistics or from all these multilateral organizations, then you pick one of those goals, you would actually see where you can start from, your community. And by starting that way, you can be able to duly represent, what I call your first-hand constituency. That's the people in your local communities. So by starting local, in a global context, you actually open up yourself to be able to tap into, the global opportunities that exist. And so by the time you get that platform, that audience, what some of all this, opportunities does is that it gives us, that platform to showcase ourselves. And then you can now, build on the, the network, the people you meet from that network, to actually scale your project, to give more visibility to what you are doing. And of course, to sort of validate whatever it is that you are doing. So now after I joined, I was part of EFA last year. And for the fact that, I was able to tell the story. So Oyinda, never mind that I'm also going towards storytelling, as I'm answering that question. As I was able to tell that story, it kind of like validates the fact that, okay, the fact that I'm working locally, I actually have a place, to contribute to global discussions that my first-hand constituency, actually has a place in. And so from telling the stories, many other opportunities were coming. People were like watching, and, from there, I was able to, being in Africa Back Network, I was able to, tap into some other resources, and then from there, I was able to get properly guided, even for some of my applications and all of that. As, I am doing this now. I've shared the story on my Facebook and, I'm watching, before I joined and, it's actually gaining traction. And what happens with that is that I've also gotten some invitation. I can send an invitation already in my messenger, to be part of another community and share what I'm doing. So being on, starting locally gives you that opportunity to represent your constituency in global conversations and discussions. You're able to tap into networks. That global participation validates your work and it helps you to scale and actually to drive more ability to tell more of your story and to enter into spaces you otherwise wouldn't have entered if you are just on your own without leveraging the networks. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Dennis. I think you've actually touched on a lot of points in just the short time you've spoken. You've also sort of touched on how young people can leverage, networks like this, how young people can also use whatever community project they are doing to position themselves in global spaces and get validation for the work that they are doing. So I'm just going to move straight to Akosua. And Akosua, we're just going to be talking about Ban Ki-moon scholarship because I promised Ban Ki-moon people that we would spend some time talking about, you know, oh, I have a hard, it's, okay. Okay, no problem. Oh, I didn't even, yeah, I was reading it out. Sorry. Yeah, so yes, so we would just try to be as fast as possible. I think what a lot of people probably would be very curious about is the SDG micro project. I think that's one thing that is a bit specific to the Ban Ki-moon scholarship, is the fact that beyond all these nice things you have to say about yourself and what you're about, you actually have to design a small project called the SDG micro project. So could you share from your own personal experience what's the most important things that have to be in whatever project people are thinking around? What makes a Ban Ki-moon worthy SDG micro mini project? And
hey, exciting. See, I can share this. I literally got this. I got this in the mail not too long ago, so I took a picture today.
But we want you to speak from your own experience. Like, you know, obviously there's some things that, you know, are written in fine lines, but there are some things that also come from experience. So if you could integrate what they are asking for to your own personal experience, you know, reflecting on your journey, how you were able to arrive at the project. Was it a new project? Was it something you had done before and you just had to scale? Like, just your own experience and how you think people can benefit from that.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is great, and I can speak to that because I actually also, you know, they shared it, and then we were supposed to share as alumni, and I shared it on my LinkedIn, and a number of people. Oh, that is interesting. Somebody is asking whether the Ban Ki-moon scholarship covers MBA. Well, this is good because I'm going to be answering some of those. I actually posted it on LinkedIn, as I was saying, and a lot of people were asking me questions. And these days, I hardly have, like, first, I used to be very consistent in being able to help people answer those. Basically, I was better at answering my messages, and now I'm not. So I was like, okay, let me put together a post, like an article, just because the post was too long. So let me write an article on LinkedIn. And I was actually concluding that yesterday in the night. So this morning I was like, I have to post it. So I was working on that on the side when I was eating my lunch. So I can actually, you know, answer some of those questions that were asked. And because people were asking about my personal experience, how did I write my SDG project? So basically, Alasan is the one who told me about the Ban Ki-moon scholarship. I knew Julia already because on LinkedIn. I don't know how, but I know how, because Alasan, I think, spoke about me. And so I connected with Julia, who is the program manager for this project, on LinkedIn. And I met her at the EFA 2019, even before the next one. And Alasan told me to actually apply. I have to say, Alasan, like, is one of my big, I mean, I talk about Alasan a lot in different situations because he's really been, around some of these things for longer. So he introduced me to that, and he had worked on the Recycle App project because he's a co-founder in that. So when I was applying, I've been working for a very long time with Widows and Orphans. It's an organization, it's called God Cares. My mom started that organization. My dad died very young, so it was her lived experience. And then she wanted to help other people. And so I'd literally, been brought up helping the organization for a very long time. And I thought, something at the time, so I was very much involved in climate change. So I was bringing together two things: no poverty, zero poverty, let me use that word, zero hunger, gender equality, and then climate change. So I was like, okay, these are 4 things that I'm very passionate about. So how do I bring it together in a project that, I can, I have passion on every aspect of the project. That's how I thought about it. At the time, so I was working at Green Climate Fund. I was actually reviewing a lot of projects. So these are big $1 million projects that I was reviewing at the time. So I basically felt like I stole some of the ideas from some of the projects that I had been reviewing when I was at GCF to create this climate resilient agriculture project for widows and orphans. So it was touching on everything that I actually enjoyed doing. And that's how I actually built that project. It was on 3 levels. And the first one, I think, when you're building a project for the micro SDGs, to think about the impact first. What impact do I want to make? Then you think about what activities will help me be able to achieve those impacts. Then you think about the outputs. How will I report those outputs? So those are some of the things, like those are some of the big, you don't have to have a degree, you don't have to read so much, just go on Google, find out all these things, and just think about what impact do I want to make? I want to make sure that widows and orphans do not go hungry, they are taken care of. And a lot of them that we were working with, they were in rural areas, they already have the land. Some of them were already involved in farming, but when their husbands died and they lost a lot of capital, they couldn't go back and work on those farms. So those farms have become bushes. So I was like, that's great. How can we help them meet their basic needs, their food as well, get food on the table for themselves and their children without having to do something that's completely new that they haven't done before. And that's how I started the project. So those were some I wanted to make, and the activities was number 1, with providing training, providing inputs, supporting them when they need, creating communities among the women themselves, so that they are helping each other, they are sharing information, they are helping each other on their farms. So those are the basic ideas. So that's how I framed it. Now, realistically, I want to say that the Ban Ki-moon scholarship program, and Oyinda and Alasa may have had it differently, but I think that's how it happens. It doesn't provide funding. It's not a scholarship.
Yeah,
for
I wanted
you are
to
a scholar,
ask
but
you
it's
that
not
question
like
so that people know.
You have to descend from heaven. There's no funding. So there's no funding for your project. That's number 1. And there's no funding for you as an individual. Now, the difference that I think Oyinda Dems had is that they got to attend EFA, like they were funded to attend EFA. For those of us in 2020, I think if not for COVID, we would have gone to Paris for the African Cities Summit, I think, and Ruvi can correct me. But because of COVID, that was scrapped. So we did this online course. So we did this online course, summer school for a week. And that was like, that was supposed to replace the travel that we would have had the opportunity to travel. And there was a lot of expert workshops, which were supposed to help you. So there was an expert workshop on funding, opportunity to really connect with these people. One of the things I have to say that you have to try and make time. I was very busy at the time. I was managing Recycle Up Ghana Incubator Program. It was like the middle of a lot of things. So I feel like I could have done more. I think averagely committing 3 to 5 hours a week would be a good thing to be able to make sure you're implementing your project, but then you're also being able to take advantage of the community that they are providing you. I've talked too much. So maybe I'll just answer, like, is there anything that anyone wants to ask? I could.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the chat room, I think the specific question to the Ban Ki-moon scholarship is the one around, MBAs, PhD. So I think from Winnie is asking, how were you able to manage your project without funding?
So I think the most important thing and advice I'll give everyone is try and think about what you can leverage. So what you can basically leverage is maybe the fact that being able to use the brand, like say, oh, I've been on a Ban Ki-moon scholarship. And even another thing that he said, you cannot actually put the Ban Ki-moon logo itself. I mean, you can talk about it that you've been on a scholarship, but you cannot put the logo itself on like your website or anything like that. So, but they would let you use the micro SDG, this SDG round thing badge, and you get the. So I think that's one of the things you have to leverage. The other thing I would say you have to leverage is the community that they try to connect you with. So some of the experts, the people who are in the experts workshop, if I feel like I didn't take advantage of that as much. If you have time, like being able to follow up with them and have conversations with them, I think that's like definitely builds your network. So the first thing is take a project or write your project in such a way, or think you can write your project in such a way and say, oh, I need X amount of funding, but have that backup plan and say, if I don't get funding, this is the scope that I can be able to do. So for mine, I was only able to do scope 1. Now, apart from the funding thing, COVID impacted my scope, because at the time, COVID was like big. So there was no way I was going to be able to have engagements with the widows. There was no way going to have training with them. I mean, they don't use the internet. We're not going to have Zoom. So that was not going to happen. So I literally did the scope 1, which was really an impact evaluation. And I brought a number of people around. I was like, okay, you know something, you guys should help me to evaluate an organization that has been in existence for 18 years, that has done this much work, but that has not really documented and taking data on the impact that they've made and being able to share that with funders or donors or even just the community, the international community, or even the local community. They have not done that. So when we started that actually has spun into a transformational project where the organization is now basically leading some of the parts of that transformational project. We are looking at how do we really focus on building their structures, connecting with donors, those kind of things. So I did only the impact evaluation part, and the other part I'm looking at helping the organization put a structure in place and then finding funding. And also just, getting more people involved, getting program managers for different programs. Specifically for this climate resilience program, we are looking at getting a project manager for that, getting other volunteers involved. So yeah. There was another question. I tried to answer that in my, anyway.
Is it the one on how you would approach the question on how would you otherwise not have access to this opportunity?
Sorry, I know I've seen this question, but I think that's not like the full question. Why would you otherwise
not have access to this opportunity?
Without this funding, I cannot be able to make, I think rephrasing that is saying without this funding, I would not have been able to, I will not be able to make this impact. Like, how do you approach that question? Oyinda, is that a right way? Like, maybe the person can come up and ask the question.
Miriam, if you're on the call, if you could just speak to the mic so she could get your question.
Yeah, so it's actually a part of the letter of motivation. So I think under the letter of motivation, which is a maximum of 500 words, we are asked to answer how you why you want to receive the scholarship, why you want to attend the summit, the Africa Cities in 2030 summer school, what makes you a global citizen, and then the last one is why would you otherwise not have access to this opportunity? So I think, I don't know, I'm just struggling to find a way to approach that last part of the essay, and that's why I just wanted to hear what you think.
Yeah, I think, now that you even say it, I would have worded that differently. I don't understand. Like, I mean, if I would have worded that differently now that I listen to it. I think maybe how I would word it is how without this opportunity, because how without this opportunity, like I would not be able to, number one, make the impact, do my SDG, or maybe I cannot be able to engage as much as a global citizen, right? That's how I would, I think, approach that if I'm wrong. So I think I answered that in the article that I was just writing about, which I'll post on LinkedIn. So you can all check on LinkedIn. Is when you have been able to really say, this is what my micro SDG project is, and this is what my micro SDG project is, and this is the impact that I would make. I feel like after you have said that, what you want to say is, this Ban Ki-moon scholarship is providing me this expertise. Like, look at the program components. That's what I would do. I look at the program components and I'm trying to match it and say, if these program components would help me achieve my project. So if I don't get these, I feel like I will not be able to implement my projects and make this impact that I want to make, and try every time to relate it to the SDGs, like note the SDGs that you want to. Sorry, I'm just going to join this call and mute myself. So hi, Brahma.
Akosua, I think you can take a minute or two. Maybe Ru can contribute to the question while you settle into your other meetings. So Ru, if you have some thoughts on the question, so that we can quickly round off the other questions that people asked.
My apologies, please, could you restate the question for me?
Okay, so the question is on one of the questions they ask in the application, which is why would you otherwise not have access to, just give me a moment. Let me scroll.
Oyinda, I can quickly answer that.
Okay.
And I could just like keep quiet on the call, but I'll be here on the call. So if any question comes up that like I have to answer, I'm so sorry. It's like still 2 p.m. my side, so I'm kind of still at work. So, I think answering that, how I would.
We're talking about program components.
Yeah. So the program components, the first one is you're going to have these expert workshops. Definitely one of them will be on funding, right? I know that for sure. So that one, and then all the others. And then I don't know how the virtual school would be like, but what you want to do, I think, which would make the best sense, like to whoever is reading, is you first is approach the motivation statements after you have written your micro project, because you want to now say that my micro project is going to make this much impact, and then those impacts are immediately connected to the SDGs. And by that, I want to say that these program, which is the expert workshops, the people that I'll be connected through the workshops, my other scholars, right, who are working on different things, the summits, all of these would help me to be able to make these impacts. And if you can really, I can give an example, but if you could note those, that would help. Okay. That would help.
Okay. Thank you so much, Akosua.
I'll be soon as well, so just in case.
Okay, that's fine. I would also just want to drop a few thoughts on that question, because I see Winnie asking some questions, and so these are my thoughts. So generally I would advise that because of COVID, and even with the way a lot of program designs are going right now, everybody's thinking what can be a virtual alternative, or what could be the virtual first thing you could do before you even think of physical implementation. So for instance, in the development space, research will always be a very good program design idea. So if you're not able to go physically into certain spaces, who are the people you could talk to give you more understanding of that particular problem, that could inform evidence-based policy design or program design? That could be one step. So it's a project, and they really emphasize on the many aspects of the project, and that means different projects could actually lead to an entire program. So in a program, you could have the capacity building elements, you can have an advocacy element. So there are different elements that could be in one program. And so you could think of different things that might not necessarily imply or incur costs in that very intensive way. I think training, capacity building for young people who could be, random thoughts, who could be local champions for a particular cause, maybe sustainability or whatever. We would never stop doing capacity building. The entire Ban Ki-moon project is all about capacity building in the first place. So capacity building is also one way you can think around solving, your problem. Who are the stakeholders that you could reach out to that are probably have more access to the people you are trying to reach, you know. So those are some of the ideas you could think around in a way that might not be very cost intensive. So capacity building and research will be like my two alternatives for people that are thinking around how they could do alternatives to these programs or projects in a way that might not be cost intensive. Then the other thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to Ban Ki-moon Fellowship is, like Akosua said, the networks and what the brand does for you. So for Ban Ki-moon, they try as much as possible to really keep the community active. You know, Alassane and I have been privileged to get speaking opportunities that are quite, you know, high level, speaking at the UN SDG action campaign, speaking, yeah, I think that was the one opportunity. And there was another opportunity where I was nominated to join a UNODC workshop in Nigeria. And through that, I was able to build contacts in UNODC Nigeria. And because of that, I was also able to co-organize an event with UNODC Nigeria. So some of these things might not necessarily be like, oh, they give you funding, $1,000 or whatever, but those networks could actually be very beneficial to you in terms of the spaces and they give you access to. And if you are very, very strategic about how you leverage those opportunities, those are the kinds of contacts that you could make in that through the opportunity. Okay, so Chinedu is asking the question, could you please mention the core things one can include in answering the question, what makes you a global citizen? Ru, I'm going to push this question to you. What makes you a global citizen? So yeah, I guess maybe not exactly telling people what to write, but just ideas on what global citizenship means in a very practical sense that could help people make sense of that question.
So the way I understand that question is, what makes you connect to people? Because I think a global citizen is someone who is successful at connecting with people. This is just an example. What I wrote in my application was that I had studied French and Spanish because, you know, not only had I wanted to work for the UN, but I always find that language, culture, food, dressing, these are all ways in which we can get closer to people. And I always had the heart of, I suppose, making myself more appealing to a wider network of people. And that was one of the avenues that I had taken to do so. So in answering that question, just ask yourself, you know, what have I personally done to make me a more accessible person in the community, whether that is setting up a foundation, or, you know, a bright idea that resonates with the community, or as I did, you know, language, or are you well-traveled, or are you someone who is great at information sharing? That's another valuable point. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does. Akosua, do you have any extra points to make? Akosua, don't worry. So,
so I'm here. I'm here.
Are you able to talk? It's fine if you can't talk. We don't want
I'm
to
here
compromise.
and I can talk actually. I'm here and I can talk. The only thing is that I needed to put that one on mute. If not, you would hear the conversation. So yeah. But can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
What makes you a global citizen? Thoughts on how to address the question.
So I think global citizen, maybe I'll just say basically, anytime you think about your neighbor, I know these are words that are thrown around: global citizenship, multilateralism, so many big words. It basically means that you have the capacity to say, I'm going to think about myself. I'm going to think about what only works for me. But then when you begin to say, what about how what I do impacts other person? Or how about I've been able to, you know, get to where I am. How do I help other people? You are a global citizen, right? So basically what you're trying to do, or what you're going to say, or answering that question is saying, okay, what do I do now? What experiences have I had now that others have not been able to have? How can I be able to use that experience to help someone else? who can be literally my neighbor, right? So it doesn't always mean, because, I always think about the Samaritan story, right? Your neighbor is who is next to you right now. You don't always have to think about, how can I, help people in Asia and America and Europe and all of that. Like, how can I help my next neighbor? So whatever you're doing in your local community, however, you're not thinking about yourself alone, but saying, okay, all the experience that I have had, how can I impact somebody? That's how you're a global citizen. So really tie it into your projects and think and just think about it that way. It's just a big word which means a small thing. So that's how I personally would approach it. And I think if I was answering the question, I would talk about what I'm doing now, the local things I'm doing now, and how much that means to those people that I'm able to help. It can be children, it can be other youth, it can be, it can be anything. So yeah, that's
okay. Thank you so much. We would be rounding off now. I just want to.
I wanted to say just one thing, which may be a little outside. One of the things when I started, I didn't even start that early into all these global things and attending conferences. I just started like in 2018, and I think I only did about 3 or. Yeah, I literally went to the UN Climate Change Conference, and then I went to FI, and then I went to Africa Climate Week, and even that one was in Ghana. I was in Ghana, and then like I didn't do much of that, and then I think some reason why I tapered off. But what I consistently saw, and I really want to advise a lot of people, is it's good to really have that exposure and to be attending conferences and traveling and all that. But so, at a point in time, I started seeing that it has become people's full-time job. And they were not really, they were going around saying all these things that they were doing, but you go and then you realize that they are really not doing much. Like there's something around staying, having, going on talks and being invited in places and going on workshops. And as an African, you can apply for so many international conferences, so many fellowship programs, so many things. And you can make a case to go, but if you don't take care, right, you will end up just being a conference shopper. That's what I would say, and not actually make impact. And the truth of the matter is that you give yourself 5 to 10 years, because whatever the case is, most of the time you'll be like, oh, whatever to 35. So 35 o'clock or 40, whatever. And then you realize, what have I actually done? Right? And so you have to make sure you are balancing that, making sure that you are really balancing that and say, okay, what do I really want to do? The impact that I want to make. It can even be your career, right? That there comes a time where you actually have to think about those things. So while these opportunities are there, for example, I 100% believe in NGO work. I'm doing NGO work. I want to end up, that's all that I want to do in the end. So it will be good for me to attend conference, maybe tell people about the widows and orphans work that I'm doing. But then I have to make sure that I'm actually doing that work. I'm actually implementing projects. There are real work like being done. And like at a point in time, because I'm part of different forums, I realize, people are just want to travel and they're traveling a lot. And that's all good. It's very, very good. But like, just make sure you're really doing impact. And that's also happening in the entrepreneurship landscape. You see people going for page upon page, traveling for example, and then I'm like, okay, what product do you have? Can we take your proof of concept and can we, what are you doing? And then you find they don't even have like a market, or they don't really have a customer base. And yes, so they are going from page to page. So make sure that you're balancing those two. I think it's very important. Like in the long run, it would be important for you to think about the real work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for making that point, Akosua. In summary, like people should make sure that they are building a track record, actually doing the work, so that you're not just a nomad acquiring fellowships and conference attendance without necessarily having a track record that can speak for you, or that can connect impact to the platforms that you've had access to. So on this note, we'll be rounding off, but Alassane, you raised your hand, so I don't know if you just want to share some final thoughts. There was a question from Pritchard. Yeah, there was a question from Pritchard that I would advise Pritchard to ask Ifeanyi directly. It's around writing a PhD proposal in a field that you're not very knowledgeable in. So we might not have the time to address it now, but I think you should reach out to Ifeanyi. Ifeanyi, you could also just drop your number in the chat so that Pritchard could connect with you, boy. Pritchard, you could find his number on the group, on the WhatsApp group as well. So Alassane, final thoughts before we call it a night or day.
Okay, thanks, Oyinda. I was actually clapping for Akosua, but yeah, once you've given me the platform, yeah, I was actually going to type that. Yeah, I also have observed that with people jumping from one program to the other and actually not working on their ideas. And what I wanted to say is, actually, once you focus on actually doing your on working on your ideas and making impact, you will even get invited to programs without you even applying for it. They will find you and invite you, and you won't even have time to even attend. You would be, you will have opportunities where sometimes there are so many, and you have to even turn some of them down. So that's how it is. Once you just focus on what you are doing, it will pay off in the long run. So yeah, that's just what I was actually typing in the chats, but it's easier to just say it and get it out. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Alassane, for that thought. I would just want to add to that as well that it's all about balancing, because as much as you might not be able to, like Akosua said, it's important to know when to do some things and then when it's time to actually build a track record. I'm talking about balance because on one end, there are a lot of people doing amazing work who also don't exactly have access to these platforms, which could actually make their work scale, make them reach more people, as much as they're getting new information, on understanding the trends, how they can make their work better. So there's the value in, like Akosua said, there's value in some of these conferences to stay abreast of what's happening, but you have to balance it by actually doing the work. And like Alassane said, at a point, you would not even be pursuing those opportunities per se, but your work will be recognized in such a way that those platforms would seek your engagement. So it's a fine art of balance, knowing when to do some things. On that note, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you, everyone, for finding the time to attend. I think it was a good first session, and we'll be happy to take feedback. Alassane and Rumbi were part of those, coordinating these sessions. So we are open to your feedback, ideas on what we could talk about, what would be beneficial to the group. The idea is to strengthen one another. So really, there's no one is an island. There are things that I don't know. There are things I know that you don't know. So it's just good for us to keep sharing and making each other better. So thank you everyone for attending. And on this note, it's bye-bye. So have a wonderful evening. And Akosua, your day is just starting, so bye-bye. have a nice rest of the day. And we'll catch up another time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you, bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Ifeanyi. Thank you, Ruvimbo. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Julia.
It was awesome. I've learned so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye, Elizabeth.
Bye.